Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. My name is Nicole Campbell-Leeds. I am the head of marketing here at Fertility, and I will be your host this evening. Thank you for taking the time to join us. So before I hand over to our two fabulous panelists who are, of course, the reason you joined, I just want to take a minute to introduce Fertility and Altrui, a little bit about what we do. And then I will hand it over to Sam and Debs to introduce themselves. So a little bit about us. We at Fertility and Altrui are delighted to have Sam and Debbie here. We are a London-based virtual clinic. So what does that mean? That means that we are a clinic where we do as much as possible in your home or close to it. So if you're not in London or you have a very busy schedule, we do everything we can to make the experience work around your life. So that's telemedicine appointment, diagnostics by mail, and a dedicated fertility advisor that you can reach by app or by phone during our extended business hours. We have an expert specialist team that finds and matches UK egg donors with intended parents and with those who need egg donation. This is like a really unique and personalized service where we get to know our donors and our patients really individually so that we can make sure it's the perfect match for both of you. We do one-to-one egg donation where all the donors' eggs go directly to the recipient to use in a fresh embryo transfer. And that means there's no waiting list. That means when we get a donor in who matches your specifications and your needs, we'll match you directly. And we did get some questions about time to match and how we do matching, so we'll address those a little bit later. A couple housekeeping notes. We, as the panelists, have speaking abilities. For those of you who haven't joined a Zoom webinar before, it's quite easy. You have a Q&A box. We did take your questions that you submitted during registration. We'll start with those. But if you have questions, as Sam and Debbie are telling their stories, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A box. I'll keep a running list and I will, we'll get to as many of your questions as we possibly can. For those, if we don't get a chance to answer your questions this evening, please feel free to ask them anyway. You will get a follow-up email from us and we will do our best to address those questions. Or you can email us directly and we will address your questions one-to-one if by some chance we don't get to them this evening. But you didn't come here to hear from me. So let me introduce you to Sam and Debbie. So Sam, after a long IVF journey, Sam became a mom through egg donation. She's now a mom to the lovely Robin, and she runs a baby loss and infertility blog. And she also creates unique jewelry for fertility support. So she's been working with us here at Fertility for quite a while and has been a wonderful advocate telling her story, as well as Debbie, who has herself been an egg donor. She's also, when not donating eggs multiple times, which is much appreciated by everybody in this community, she's a photographer, a mom of two herself, and she has actually been a 3-time egg donor with Fertility. So an MVP. Sorry, I'm such an American. I use American terms. I promise I'm in London.
MVP, go, I'll take it.
Right, an MVP, most valuable player. Sorry, American sports metaphor. But enough from me. If I could hand over to you two to tell your personal stories before we move to the Q&A. So Debbie, do you start? Can I hand it to you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, I mean, you covered it really well. I don't know what else I'm going to kind of say from that, but yeah, I've donated 3 times, in total, all 3 times with Fertility. I started my donation journey back in 2016. So before COVID, before lockdown, and things were, a little bit more, face to face then. So the fact that what you guys do now is just incredible. It's a majority of it is whatever they can do in your own home, they do, which is just great. It just makes things, so much easier, so slimline, so efficient. But yeah, I mean, I decided to donate because I've got, as Nicole said, I've got 2 children. I didn't have to do a lot to get them. There was no challenge, there was no struggle, but I had friends and family that really struggled, starting, on their journey. And I just wanted to do what I could do to help. So, and that's how egg donation came about. And as I said, I did it in 2016, 2018 and 2019. And that I know of, 2 babies have been born from that. So yeah, it's just a really amazing experience. And I'm here to help and answer any questions that you guys have.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Debbie. We do have a number of questions for you, but before we move on to Q&A, Sam, can I hand it to you to tell a little bit about your story as well?
Yeah, so yeah, thanks Nicole as well. Thanks for the intro, and really great as well to be here with everybody this evening. So much like Debbie, if anyone's got any questions, kind of looking forward to being able to answer those. But a little bit of background from my side. So did a kind of a bit of a grueling, kind of tough IVF journey to start off with. So we were kind of sort of 3 failed rounds of IVF, and on that 3rd round we were kind of given the sort of devastating news, if you like, that actually our only option probably from there on was either adoption or to look at an egg donation cycle, and that was probably for me instantly quite tough. We'd already ruled adoption out quite early on in our journey, that wasn't really for us, but the egg donation piece kind of really took me a long time to get my head around the possibilities of that, and how to kind of just emotionally deal with that being the case and facing that being an option. So it probably took me a good 6 months. I took about 6 months out of having my treatment, and did a lot of research, really looked into it, kind of, you know, what it meant, how the process worked, how they matched donors, like the wait lists, all of the kind of things that you become concerned about, and also just how I would feel, you know, from a genetics point of view as well. And actually the research that I did, by the time I'd kind of finished that research, I actually felt really comfortable with the egg donation process and actually the chance that it could give me. So we went on to go for an egg donation cycle, and yeah, like literally the first chance, first embryo we transferred back from our egg donor. Yeah, my daughter was then born like 9 months later. So yeah, it's a pretty amazing experience, and yeah, just completely life-changing for me. Something that at that point in my life probably thought I would never get that opportunity, never thought I would be a mum. It was kind of at the point of giving up hope, and that, you know, that was it. We kind of destined to not be parents. And yeah, my donor literally changed my life. She made me a mum. So yeah, I now have a mad 2-year-old that runs around my house making lots of noise. And now the challenge is a completely different one. It's yeah, it's completely the opposite end of the scale now. So yeah, that's pretty much me.
That it's so wonderful to hear stories that end well. I don't know, I've heard you tell your story before, I'll be honest, but every time I get this feeling in my chest, it's really wonderful. But so a lot of people actually though are interested, you mentioned at the beginning sort of this process of coming to realize you were going to need to use a donor. And so what challenges did you face? We've had somebody ask, once deciding to use an egg donor, what was that process like?
For me, actually, that process was actually okay. For me, that was really almost kind of the simplistic part of it. And I think, you know, like, you know, companies like Fertility that actually make that process so much easier for people like myself and that are in that position, because it is quite tough. I think, you know, when you embark on that kind of, once you've made that decision to want to have a family, you're naturally already thinking like you're carrying on your bloodline, your kind of your DNA, your genetics. It's, you know, it's really your child. And the bit that it took me a while to get my head around, and I'm sure is a question that a lot of people face when they're kind of looking at this as an option, is, you know, how am I going to feel about any child that's born from that? Am I really going to feel like that child's mine? And that was the bit for me, particularly for myself, because I'm an only child, so it's just me, and I really felt like for me, my bloodline and my genetics from my side of the family just stopped with me, and I couldn't carry that on because I wasn't able to kind of, you know, conceive a child of my own. And I felt like I'd failed a little bit. Absolutely now can say on the flip side of that all of that is just completely not true, and it all just disappears and it all melts away. Because somebody told me that the second your child is handed to you, you'll forget about all of that, and you don't believe that until that is absolutely the case. But it is absolutely true, you do completely forget about all of that, it kind of melts away. But actually there's real science behind the fact that actually yes, you've got like, you know, the biological aspect of that egg kind of carries that person's, you know, genetics, and but obviously my other half's genetics as well. But also I carried her for 9 months, so I gave her bloodline. She's got my, you know, she's got my cells, my blood, like, and vice versa. You know, some of that gets transferred back to me as well as I'm growing her. So, and Debbie will tell you, she's met her. She couldn't be more like me if she tried.
It's frightening. It's so frightening. It's just like, she is you.
Yeah. It's very strange, but she is also really like my husband. So, you know, and Debbie mentioned this earlier today. She was like, if she didn't know, she would have no idea. She literally, you know, and I think that's the bit, like, you know, it's one of those things. It's a process that you either keep very private and you keep yourself, and you don't have to tell anyone. Nobody needs to know that process because it's not obvious. But equally, it's, you know, there's nothing, you know, there's nothing wrong with it either. I think sometimes there's a real shame that gets carried with it, and actually there shouldn't be any shame at all, because it's something that's completely out of your control. And you know, we all need a little bit of help in life with various different things, and that is just the way that I ended up having to see this. Was I just needed a little bit of help, and there's nothing wrong with accepting that to kind of get your dream and get what you need. So yeah, for me, it was, at the time, there was a real kind of emotional and kind of thought sort of process challenge. But once I got over that, and like I say, I just gave myself that time to process it and look at it and look into the research of it and how it all works, and kind of, you know, like I say, sort of how, you know, it works in sense of, you know, me carrying her, she's getting my bloodline, all of that sort of stuff. It was all those things that started to make me feel really comfortable with the fact that actually it's okay. So yeah, I felt fine with it in the end.
So you've actually raised a couple of questions that people wanted to hear a little bit more about. So one was, I obviously know Robin's, you know, only 2, so she's still pretty young. But, you know, somebody asked, one of our participants asked, when did you first start talking to your child about egg donation? And if I may add to their question, you know, what is your plan going forward, since obviously a 2-year-old has pretty limited
Yes, and it's a really, really good question, and actually one that we talked about quite a lot actually throughout the course of today. But actually for me, 100% something I will definitely be telling her and talking to her about. One, because I think for me there's a real gap in our education, particularly in the UK, around how we, you know, how we're taught in schools around kind of our own like fertility and kind of like, you know, how our bodies operate. And, you know, for me, I spent most of my youth trying not to get pregnant because that's what I was taught in school. It never occurred to me that actually when I want to become pregnant, that might not actually be possible. Nobody told me that by the time I'm, you know, a certain age, my fertility massively declines and practically falls off of a cliff. So I think that for me, that's why it's a really important subject that I want to kind of raise and talk to her about. One, to kind of bridge that gap in the education system for her, and also because it may actually encourage her to go on to help other people, and she might want to donate her eggs. And what a great story that would be, right? She's an egg donor child herself, and then she goes on to do the same thing. That would be amazing. But I think it's equally important for her to know she came from a journey of real strength and determination and hope and so many other things, because I just was not prepared to like give up, and just that some way, shape or form she was going to be here. And I think that's really important. Like, you know, I think it demonstrates, certainly for me, to demonstrate to her how much she was wanted, and I think that's really important. And for me, I've kind of moved past that aspect of having any kind of worry or shame about what people think. I actually want her to be proud of where she kind of came from and that journey that we went. So I definitely would be telling her about it. When that will be, I don't know, because I think, as you say, Nicole, she's still really young. She's 2, but when the time's right, basically, for her to understand kind of what that means, and probably when that question, you know, as they start to get a little bit older, they start to ask those questions about where do babies come from, and, you know, they see other people and see people carrying babies in their tummies, and those little questions start to come up. And so I will explain it to her, absolutely, because I think it's a really important thing to do.
And with egg donation, you did carry her in your tummy, right? So
absolutely,
huge,
exactly.
advantage to that. But so, and I do want to get to Debbie, so hold tight, Debbie, for just one more question. We've had a number of questions about being open with others besides the child themselves. So a number of people have asked whether you were open with people around you about using an egg donor, and if so, what the reactions have been.
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because I think, like, and you know, I may be a little bit wrong, but for those that are probably asking that question, I get it. I get where you're coming from, and I get how tough that, like, sometimes that can feel, because it's a really private journey. It's a real personal like process that you go through, and sometimes it's tough, like to talk up to it and talk about it and tell loved ones and friends and family and all those that are around you about what you're currently going through, because one, it doesn't resonate, because they're not going through it and they don't understand, and people try to, but it's really hard because they don't know what it feels like. They've not been in your shoes, and it's scary. But my advice would be is, don't shy away from it. You actually be probably really surprised about people's reaction to it. And most of them, to be honest, every reaction we had has been a really positive one. In the beginning, our real kind of close family and friends knew about, obviously, the IVF process. So like my mum and dad, my husband's mum, our best friends, and probably about 2 or 3 other people, and that was it. It was really small. We didn't tell anybody else, just because at the time we didn't want people constantly asking us questions of like, oh, how you doing, or you know what, or phoning you up on like really important days throughout the process about whether things have worked. And because we'd already been through a real roller coaster, and sometimes those questions are really tough to take on days where it's not going so well. So we kind of chose to keep it in a very small net, and I get that, but my advice is to tell people that are close to you, because you do need that support network. I think it's really important to have people that just may understand why you're kind of shying away from like social events, or like, you know, don't feel up to doing certain things. I think that's really important, that people understand that you're going through a kind of real up and down journey as well. But yeah, the whole egg donor piece, for me, it took quite a while to, I suppose, almost have the guts to say, actually, that we got to this point, and then we were faced with this, and this was the decision we made. And I don't think now, looking back, for me, that was any other reason than it was a real roller coaster, and it took me time to process that and how I was going to tell people, because I think it's still such a subject that's so taboo, so misunderstood, so like there's so little information out there, and so people themselves don't know how to react to it. So I almost wanted to be in a position that when I told people, I could educate them at the same time. And I think it had to be a point where I came out the other side of that and processed it myself of what we've gone through, to then be able to tell people and actually tell them why it's important, why it's so great, you know, what it really means and what it can give back to people. So yeah, for me, it was very much about let's take that time to process it, and then I can educate people as well as tell them at the, you know, why we did it and what we've gone through at the same time. So
that makes a lot of sense. So we did promise people both sides of the story, so I want to make sure we talk a little bit about the experience. So Debbie, people want to know, you know, so what was your motivation behind donating eggs, and specifically, do you see, you mentioned that 2 children have been born from your eggs. Do you see them as part of you or as part of your family?
That's, I think it's a bit of a loaded question, I think, that one. So, you know, but it's an amazing question. So, I mean, what motivated me was, as I said, I'm really fortunate. You know, I didn't have to, Sam's journey to parenthood, like, wow, do you know what I mean? It's absolutely, you know, incredible. Mine was very standard, and you know, and kind of, you know, I didn't have to do a lot to get my children, and I really took that for granted when I was having conversations with people that were so close to me, who were months down their journey and things just kind of weren't moving. And you know, I was having a conversation with my mum at the time, and she said, oh yeah, I nearly was an egg donor, and this would have been, oh my God, you know, when she was looking into it, this would have been back in like 1991 or something insane. So it would have been a completely different process then. And she sort of said, oh yeah, I didn't get round to it. And and then, you know, and then I found Apricity and sort of reached out, filled in a form, and then all of a sudden it was like, we have a couple who really love you and would love your eggs. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's so weird, you know, you're filling in this profile, and it's asking questions about you and your likes and your hopes and your dreams, and it's like, feels like you're filling in you know, a bit of a dating profile. It's really strange. I'm like,
it is a bit like that.
And, you know, I like smooth jazz and all that, you know. So it was really surreal experience. But as I said, for me, it was just kind of like, you know, my family was complete, and I wanted to help other people get that. And it's not necessarily, you know, I think lots of people do focus on, from a donor side, that the focus is on, oh, okay, you know, I can get somebody else a baby, but actually all you can do is give people a chance, give them an honest chance. And, you know, Sam, we were talking earlier and we were kind of saying, you got to have hope. And that is so important. But to have hope, you need to have donors. You know, you need to have people who will, you know, give you that chance, and to, you know, a few weeks of your time. And it's not like all day every day. It's, you know, it's not like a flu clinic where you're away for 2 weeks. Sometimes I wish it was, because that would have been really nice. But, you know, it's not like where you're, you know, shut up in a room. It's, you're at home, you're living your life, you're going to work, you're seeing your friends. So, you know, for me, it was very much a no-brainer. I know obviously other people will have kind of different opinions, but for me, it was a no-brainer. And I did it 3 times. So it's, you know, it's a great thing to do. And then in regards to the children born, I think it's really, really important. And, you know, Sam, you and I were talking about this earlier, like, you grew Robin, like, you are her mummy. So at no point, and when I've talked to my children and my family and friends and things about it, at no point do I see them as my children. Biologically, it's my genes, it's my DNA, right? But I don't see them as I see them as, you know, you needed an egg, there's my egg, but you're the mum, you're the parent. And I think of them every day, you know, and not just the children, but the families as well. You know, you don't know anything about them, you know, maybe a little bit. Initials I knew, and I got letters and things from my recipients and cards, and I've still got them. And, you know, sometimes I'll pull them out and have a good old cry, just because I'm just like, oh, I'm so happy. Because it is, you are, and Sam, you know, you'll agree, but you are forever connected through those children, because, you know, you know that you've given them that chance, you've given them that, you know, you're a really important part of their journey. And sometimes I sit there and think, oh, I wonder if they think of me like how I think of them, you know. And we said earlier, I think if I was to ever meet them, you know, the parents and things, I would just hug them and just be like, wow, you know, look at this crazy journey we went on together. Because where it's, you know, where when you're doing it, and again, we were talking about it earlier, when you're doing the injections, and I was sat there going, I wonder if she's doing it as well. Are we doing it at the same time? Are we, oh, I wonder how she, you know, and as I was rubbing cold cans of Pepsi Max on the mark, so, you know, to numb it a little bit, you know, and it's like, I wonder if she knows to do this, you know. And it's just this, you go through it together, and you just, you know, you hope that that they will have, you know, the desired outcome. But if it's not, you've given them a chance, and you'll always be connected through that.
And actually, you raise a really good question, this question about meeting and being introduced. So somebody was very curious, and actually this is to both of you. Do you guys think most donors and or recipients you know, or the children born would want to be able to meet each other. Is that something that you yourself have experienced, or, you know, something that's come across, you know, either the desire or the actuality? I know you mentioned cards, Debbie.
Yes, yeah. So, I mean, listen, you know, if they wanted to reach out, you know, when the children turn 18, if they want to reach out, amazing. I would love to meet them. I would love to meet the family, you know, the mom, the dad, you know, the parents, I would love to meet them. But I fully appreciate that not everybody would, you know, that would want that. And I'm also not expecting that. But, you know, again, just, you know, when you kind of think, okay, you know, we don't know much about them. And it's like, they know more about you as a donor than you know about them as a couple. And Sam, you know, you're, in terms of like medical history, you know, my medical history, open book right there. So, you know, in terms of, and I don't get to see their profile, they get to see mine. So actually, you know, they do, as a recipient, you know, quite a bit about the donor. They know my hair color, they know my eye color, they know what I do for what I did then for a job. They know my likes, my dislikes, my weird sense of humor, you know, and
like probably they choose you, don't they? Not the other way around.
Exactly.
You don't choose them. So.
Exactly. Listen, I've got initials, and I know what their handwriting looks like, you know, in terms of, you know, their cards. So as recipients, the ball is very much in your court. If that's something that you wish to do, you know, you'll know more about us than we'll know about you. And if you want to reach out, that's wonderful. If not, that's okay too. We don't donate eggs in the hope in 18 years we get to meet you. None of us will do that. But it's, you know, if they want to, that's fine too.
Yeah, and I think just to add, I mean, and going back to what you were saying earlier on, Debs, about the whole dating profile, I think it is very much like that. It was really like that for us, because I remember sort of, you know, a bunch of profiles kind of came over, and it was like, you know, here you go, like, here, you know, people's vital statistics, kind of like almost, and, you know, you get to kind of like, you know, you've got a few profiles that you can kind of like then choose from, and it's like, oh my God, it's like, it feels like the most important decision of your life that you'll ever make. Like, which one do I pick out of these profiles? And I remember it thinking, this is the most bizarre concept. Like, I'm choosing like somebody's eggs based off of this profile that feels like a dating like website. It was nuts. But, you know, it all sort of joking aside, I think for me, and we talked about this a little bit today as well, that, you know, for me, I'm an only child, I would have always loved to have had a brother or sister. And like, you know, even for Robin, I'd love for her to have like a brother or sister. And I'm still not quite sure yet whether we would go through the process again whilst we still have embryos that are frozen that we could use. We're still not quite sure, like we're still undecided where we sit within that. We're still just very much enjoying being with her and spending that time with her as she's growing, and she's still really small. So for me, it's kind of like, actually, you know, if it did get to that point where, you know, when she turns 18 and she wants to be able to go and, you know, like contact her, like the donor, I don't think I'd have an issue with that. I think that's pretty cool, because she potentially could, you know, have half brothers or sisters out there, and how great would that be, that she's got like a whole other bunch of family, you know? So pretty cool.
But also, again, you know, of course biology does come into it, you know, of course that, but ultimately, you know, when I think of, you know, family, I think it's very much your family are who love you. Yep. That's the thing. And it's, as I said, and, you know, just to reiterate earlier, you know, biologically they have my DNA and gene, those poor things, but, you know, they do, and they have you know, they have that, but, you know, and
somebody else is raising them, right? And teaching them those things. They
grew them, and amazing. And, you know, they're the mummies, and that's really, they are the mummies, and that's, do you know what I mean? It's like, wow. And again, you know, we said we have this whole thing that you know, that proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, and it's like, do you know what, sometimes it takes a village to make one.
It
I mean,
absolutely does, and thank God for the village, right? Like, it's all I can
seriously.
say. For people like me, I like, oh my God, you know, certainly wouldn't be sat here today, like, you know.
Because you know, you look at the people on yours, but like all the people that I met along my journey, you know, there was, you know, the nurses, the doctors, the anaesthetists, the you know, the embryologist who then took over, and then, you know, all like the things that you and I, Sam, wouldn't see.
Yeah.
And there's this whole network of people that go into this. So like you said,
happen. Yeah.
Robin was coming. Robin made sure that she got here.
Yeah.
That, like, you know, that was it, man. No one was stopping that kid. I know Robin. I love her. No one was stopping that
No, definitely not.
little force of nature. No one was stopping her. And yeah, it's absolutely incredible to think the work and everything that goes into all of this. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
It is a wonderful job to have, I'll be honest. I'm so sorry to do this. We only scheduled this webinar for half an hour, and which in retrospect seems like a terrible mistake. I'm sorry to everybody whose questions that we didn't get a chance to answer. I will ask one last question of Sam before we go, but just a note to everybody who's still here. Terribly, terribly sorry if we didn't get to your answer, to your question. We will do more webinars. There's clearly a lot of interest, so we will schedule more webinars with Debbie and Sam to talk a little bit more about their experience. In the meantime, if you do have questions that we can help you answer, I've put our email in the chat box. It's contact@apricityfertility.com. Please send us an email. We'll do everything we can to help get your questions answered. And we'll also schedule some more webinars. So if you're interested in just attending webinars in the future, you don't want to do a call with our team, that's totally fine. Sign up for our mailing list or follow us on Instagram. We're at apricity.life, and we'll be advertising more webinars and trying to build, continue the discussion and make sure people get a chance to answer questions, ask their questions. Just one last question, Sam. I'm getting a ton of questions about how did you sort of keep your spirits up and keep yourself looking forward and accepting of the situation when you were going through this process. I think a lot of people on the call are, you know, having a really difficult time in their life. And what was, you know, what was it that you did that sort of kept you looking at the light at the end of the tunnel?
You know, that's a really, really great question, and something that I'm massively passionate about now, coming out the other side, because for me, I found great comfort and solace in speaking to other people that were in my shoes. You know, like we can talk to all the people like medically trained and everything from a clinical perspective. You can get offered counselling with your clinic, all that kind of sort of stuff. But for me, it kind of meant nothing unless I could talk to somebody that actually had lived that experience and understood it and knew exactly how I felt. And sometimes for me, that was the bit that kept me going and kind of kept my spirits up, which was to understand that I wasn't alone, and that you know, it wasn't just me that was feeling that way or had lived through that experience, that there were other people that knew exactly how I felt, and exactly how I was feeling in that moment, had been through exactly the same process, or, you know, even people that hadn't but could absolutely relate because they've been through something similar. And for me, that's something that I'm really passionate about now, and I encourage people to kind of do, which is exactly that, like reach out to me and speak to me if they feel like they need to talk about times when it's tough. It's a real journey, it's a real roller coaster, and I think the other part of that for me is to just make sure that you always remember to be kind to yourself. Give yourself that time, give yourself that space to just kind of step back, reflect on it, process what's gone on before you kind of move forward, because there's a real danger through all of this from a infertility's perspective to just keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going because you're just trying to get to your end goal. But actually sometimes the best thing you can do is to give yourself a little bit of a break and a bit of headspace to actually process what you're going through, and also your body time to heal as well. And for me, it was those times where I just tried to kind of resume normal life, because as mad as it sounds, and I'm sure there are people on the call tonight that will appreciate this, it takes over your whole life. even when you try not to let it take over your life, it absolutely takes over your whole life. So I think it's really important sometimes to go, oh, I'm not going to go and do this tonight, or I'm not going to book that holiday, or I'm not going to do this because what if. And actually, do you know what? Kind of sometimes you just have to go throw caution to the wind and go, do you know what? I'm just going to go and do it anyway. I'm going to go and live my life, and kind of give yourself that time back and process it. And so just surround yourself with people that really care about you. They might not understand, they might not be able to resonate, but just to know that they're there and they can just, you know, put their arm around you and just go, it's fine, it will be okay. Sometimes is, you know, or just to say nothing at all is just what you need. It's just people knowing, because I think sometimes one of the biggest challenges is kind of going through it but having to live through it in secret. That's a really, really tough, because you're just having to get up every day and put on a mask to all your friends and family and loved ones. So my advice would be, is it's up to you how much you tell them, but tell them would be my advice, because at least they're aware then, like, you know, if you go to a family event or something's going on and you're just not quite sure, you're not quite yourself, they'll know why, and they don't have to ask anything. They just allow you to be, and then you don't have to worry about trying to be anything other than what's going on with you in that moment. So yeah, I think it's just surrounding yourself with the right people, and people that understand exactly what you're going through, and just know that you're not going through it alone. That's my biggest piece of advice, is just to reach out to people that, you know, have lived it from an experience perspective.
Makes a ton of sense. Well, thank you both for sharing your story, for staying extra time. I do appreciate it. Again, apologies to those whose questions we didn't get a chance to answer. Do send us an email. I've put our Facebook and our Instagram, you'll see also Sam is on Instagram, and we tag her in some of our posts, so you'll be able to follow her. And I think Debbie is on there too, so you'll be able to get in touch if you need to. You know, happy to answer your questions and connect you to resources as needed. We did get one question I want to answer really fast. Somebody asked where they can find that community, Sam, that you were talking about. All Apricity and Altrui egg recipients do become members of the Defining Mum community, which is run by the indomitable Becky Cairns. So, you know, do reach out to the Defining Mum community if you need that support. It is tremendously helpful, and we want to make sure everybody gets the support they need. So you can reach out to us, or just search the Defining Mum blog on the web, and I hope that helps for those who are looking for support. Otherwise, thank you all so much for joining, for staying late, for your wonderful questions. You will receive a follow-up email from us, and please do feel free to reach out. Again, contact at apricityfertility.com, and we'll be happy to answer questions as much as we possibly can. Thank you, Sam and Debbie. A huge round of applause for you, for your time and for sharing your incredible stories. And Debbie, for your donation. I know there's so many people here who are waiting for egg donors, and it's thanks to people like you that they get to have the family of their dreams.
She is my hero. She is absolutely my hero.
Well, have a wonderful evening, everyone. Please reach out, and
thank you to everyone for coming.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for joining.
Thanks for having us, Nicole. We're here if you need us. You can find us tagged. We're here if you need us.
Find them Apricity at Apricity Life on Instagram, and you'll see they're all over our Insta.
You'll find us,
or send us an email. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Nicole.